After 3 decades of marriage, I believed I'd kept our family together. Until the day I discovered my husband had a 31-year-old son he'd never mentioned. I didn't say a word at first. I quietly collected the proof and waited. At a family gathering, I finally exposed the truth. They'd spent years perfecting their performance. But it only took me a minute to shatter the illusion. My name's Margaret Brooks. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and today I turned 60. Coincidentally, it's also my grandson Mason's first day of third grade. That night, Mason came home from school, and my son Brian brought over a cake. I'd spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen making a special dinner for the family: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, baked mac and cheese, and a crisp garden salad. Every dish chosen because it was something they loved. When Harold and my daughter-in-law Melissa walked in from work, we all gathered around the dining table. Melissa beamed as she looked over the food, then turned to Mason and said warmly, "You'd better thank Grandma she made all of this just for your back-to-school party." But Harold's face turned cold. He frowned and snapped, "You cooked all this and didn't think to get some wine?" Brian stepped in right away to keep things calm. "Dad, come on. Let's not start tonight, okay?" he said, grinning as he unwrapped the cake and set it in the middle of the table. "Let's have cake and candles first." Harold's jab stung, but Brian's smile softened the ache in my chest. I helped him open the cake box, but the second I saw what was inside, I froze. The cake just said, "Congratulations, Mason." No balloons, no candles for me, no mention of my birthday, only those words. I leaned closer, hoping I'd missed something. But that was it. I'd really thought Brian would remember this time. Just a few days ago, I'd reminded him again. My birthday was the same day as Mason's first day of school. I told him I was hoping for a real celebration this year, to feel remembered, to feel seen. But here we were again, overlooked and forgotten. Brian noticed I'd stopped and asked, "Mom, what's up? Where's the lighter? Help me find it so Mason can make a wish." Harold barked from the end of the table. "Did you go deaf? He asked you for the lighter. What are you just standing there for?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. "Brian," I said quietly, "aside from Mason's big day, do you remember what else today is?" He looked at me blankly, furrowing his brow. "What do you mean, Mom?" Harold growled again. "She always has to make things so damn complicated. Just get the lighter already." I looked over at Mason and decided to say nothing more. There was no point in turning it into a bigger scene. Not in front of the kids. I went into the kitchen, found the lighter, and handed it to Brian, watching him light the candles. Everyone else at the table was laughing and chatting like normal, celebrating everyone but me. Dinner had just started when Mason's fork fell off the table. Melissa turned to me right away, but Brian and Harold were deep in conversation and didn't notice Mason twisted around in his seat and yelled, "Grandma, I dropped my fork! Go get me another one!" For the first time, I didn't jump to my feet. I stayed in my seat and said calmly, "Mason, you can get it yourself." Mason scowled and kicked at his mom's chair. "Mom, Grandma won't get my fork." Melissa gave him a gentle pat to calm him, then turned to me with a sweet smile and raised her voice a little. "Margaret, where do you keep the extra silverware? I'll grab one for him." Harold shot me a hard look as soon as she spoke. "Go get him a fork." Brian tried to wave her off. "Mom will take care of it. You don't have to." I got up, but I didn't go to the kitchen. I went straight to my bedroom and started packing my clothes and grabbing my bank statements. That money was from the food stall I'd run all those years. Harold never contributed much to this family. His job didn't pay much, and what he did earn usually vanished at poker nights with his friends. Hardly any of it ever made it home. When Brian was born, I stopped working to stay home with him because we couldn't afford childcare. But Harold always complained I spent too much, like every dollar I touched was a personal burden on him. Eventually, I stopped asking him for money at all. I started that little food stall at the farmer's market. I was good with my hands, good with people. The stall did better than I expected. I managed to save up a nice bit of money over the years. Honestly, even back then, I thought about leaving him, but I didn't. I was scared Brian would grow up with divorced parents, and I didn't want him to suffer for our mistakes. So I kept quiet, kept my head down, and carried on my whole life. I've always put other people first. Growing up, I was the good, obedient daughter. I was raised to believe that divorce was a scandal, that it would destroy a woman's reputation, ruin the family, and hurt the kids most of all. So I stayed. I put up with Harold's drunken rages. I endured my mother-in-law's constant criticisms. I told myself I was doing it all for Brian, to give him a whole family no matter what. And so I did for 30 long years. But how many more 30 years does a person get in one lifetime? I wiped the tears from my eyes, grabbed my suitcase, and stepped back into the living room, which was still echoing with laughter like nothing had happened. Mason already had a new fork in his hands. Melissa must have gotten it for him. When I walked in, she gave me a cold, dismissive look, then lowered her gaze and went back to eating like I didn't exist. Harold was throwing back a glass of whiskey. It was a brand new bottle. Brian had just bought it from the liquor store next door, a little treat for his dad. Seeing that crushed me even more. I've always hated alcohol. When Harold drinks, he turns into a different person. Loud, reckless, and sometimes violent. He breaks things, screams at everyone, and sometimes vanishes for days. Every time, it's me left behind to pick up the pieces over the years. Everything I'd worked so hard to buy for this house, furniture, appliances, every small comfort. He smashed to bits during one of his drunken rages. Each broken piece felt like a punch to my gut. And Brian knows exactly what his father becomes when he's drunk. He's seen it. So why does he keep buying him booze? Maybe now that he's in that fancy 3-bedroom house I bought him in the nice suburbs, he's forgotten what it's like to live with a drunk. Or maybe he never really understood, because he was never the one left to clean up the mess. Or maybe he's just too afraid of Harold to stand up to him. So he goes along and lets me take the blame. I stood there by the dining table and looked Harold right in the eye. I want a divorce, I said, my voice calm and sure. I'm done with this life. Silence fell moments before. The room had been full of laughter. Now it was sliced clean like a knife through air. Harold was the first to react. He slammed his glass down so hard I thought he'd flip the whole table. But after a quick glance at Melissa and Mason, he stopped himself, though his voice still roared. Have you lost your mind? You're almost 70, and now you want a divorce? Brian jumped up too. Mom, what are you even saying? We're just trying to enjoy dinner. Why would you want to ruin everything? Melissa pulled Mason close, her face unreadable. Watching like it was all just some show, I let out a dry, cold laugh. So this is how it all ends, huh? After decades in this house, I'm still the one everyone thinks can be tossed aside, I said, my voice steady. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight, and in the morning you'll be coming with me to sign the divorce papers. Harold's face contorted with fury. I'm not signing anything. Are you out of your mind? You really want to blow this family apart? Don't you care what people will think? Brian jumped in right away, siding with his father. Dad's right, Mom, come on. You're both way too old for this nonsense. What will people say if you split up now? Harold, seeing Brian back him up, poured himself another drink and downed it like he was royalty on his throne. That smug look on his face made my chest burn. For a split second, I wanted to snatch that glass out of his hand and throw it in his face. Brian must have seen the anger in my eyes because he quickly tried to smooth things over. Mom, you're not seriously doing this just because Dad had a few drinks tonight, are you? Look, I'll stay here tonight and keep an eye on him. If he acts out, I'll take care of it. Let's just finish dinner, okay? Whatever's bothering you, we'll work it out. But please, anything but divorce. Anything but that. That's always been my son's fallback, meaningless promises and half-hearted reassurances. Not once has he truly stood up for me. I gave him a faint smile, more bitter than kind. Brian, answer me this. Do you even remember when my birthday is? He froze, his mouth opened a bit, but no words came out. Of course he didn't remember, not since he got married. Not once I've gotten used to being overlooked, but today was the last time I'd let it slide today. I was done pretending it didn't matter, done bending over backwards for a family that never saw me. I'm 60 now, with a diagnosis hanging over my head. 6 months left to live, and it's finally clear. If I don't put myself first now, when will I ever? I turned away from them, dragging my suitcase behind me. That's when Melissa stepped in front of me, Mason clinging to her side like a little human shield. Margaret, please, she said sweetly, her voice as polished as ever, the same pleasant smile stuck on her lips. We're family. Every family has rough patches. Let's just sit down and talk about it. Then she leaned in closer, her words dropping to a hush. Didn't we agree not to bring up divorce again? I immediately stepped back, creating space between us. Well, I've changed my mind. Is that going to be a problem? Because after I divorce Harold, I want nothing to do with any of you ever again. This time, I meant every word. I wasn't just leaving Harold. I was cutting them all out of my life. What do you mean, none of us? Brian's voice was sharp as he jumped up, blocking the doorway. Mom, what the hell is this? What do you mean you changed your mind? Changed your mind about what, exactly? Exactly what I said, I replied calmly. If you're having trouble understanding, maybe your wife can explain it to you. Now move, I'm leaving. I pushed my suitcase forward, silently telling them to step aside. Margaret, you can't just leave. Melissa suddenly clutched my arm, tears welling up in her eyes like she was giving the performance of her life. What about Mason? Who's going to cook for him now? Are you really okay with him eating takeout every night? What if he gets sick? Don't you care? He's your grandson, your sweet little boy. Can you really just abandon him like that? Her words were calculated, dripping with emotion and designed to cut deep. But to me, it all sounded ridiculous. So ridiculous, I let out a cold laugh. Melissa must have thought she'd found my weak spot because she kept going, her voice soft and coaxing. You care about him, don't you, Margaret? And honestly, Brian and I need you. We really do. If it weren't for you, who'd be keeping the house running, taking care of Mason, handling everything? Brian's not exactly a homemaker. She shot a quick smile at Brian, then leaned in again, her whisper like a dagger. You know, every time my mom comes over, she always says how lucky I am to have such a responsible husband. She says I married the perfect man. Of course, she doesn't know it's you holding everything together. You're the one who keeps him looking so good. Doesn't it feel good to be the reason he's praised? She gave a soft, polite laugh. And besides, have you finished yet? I cut her off, my voice sharp and cold. Can you shut up already? Melissa froze, staring at me like she was seeing a stranger. What are you staring at? I snapped. Never seen me stand up for myself. What about Mason? Isn't he your kid? Isn't it your job to raise him, and you're still so helpless? You're in your 30s. Grow up. Now take your hands off me. I've watched you play the perfect daughter-in-law long enough. Aren't you tired? Because I sure am as of today. I'm done. I'm not anyone's mother, grandmother, or wife anymore from now on. I live for me, move. When she still didn't let go, I shoved her away. Mason saw me push his mother and immediately lunged at me, shoving me back with all the strength his little arms could muster. Grandma, how dare you touch my mom? Do it again and see what happens. Brian hurried to Melissa's side, shielding her like she was made of glass, then turned on me, his face red and shaking with anger. Mom, you've gone too far. You need to apologize to my wife. Harold was up now, too, his voice joining the angry chorus. The three of them closed in, shouting, crying, accusing. The whole room was a whirlwind of noise and fury, and yet, somehow it still managed to hurt. I'd always known, deep down, what kind of people they were. But seeing it all laid bare, the way love turned into blame and betrayal in a heartbeat, still brought tears to my eyes. These were the people I'd spent my life caring for. All I wanted was a divorce. All I wanted was to finally live for myself. Why did that have to be so hard? If they wouldn't let me leave in peace, then fine. No one would leave unscathed. They wanted a show. I'd give them one. Let's see how well they performed when every dark secret came to light. All right, everyone calm down. I'll apologize. I turned to Melissa and gave her a small, polite nod. I'm sorry, Melissa. I shouldn't have pushed you. I apologize for my actions. She froze, clearly caught off guard by my sudden shift, but she quickly recovered, glancing at Brian before giving me a watery smile. It's all right, I'm not upset. I turned to Brian and Mason, my voice even and measured. What about you two? Was my apology enough? Am I forgiven? Mason gave a tiny nod but said nothing. Brian looked uncomfortable. Mom, it's fine. No need to make a big deal out of it. I gave him a small nod. So then, would you say that when someone does something wrong, they should apologize? Mason nodded again. Brian hesitated, glancing at Melissa before finally giving a reluctant nod. Yeah, of course, if you do something wrong, you should apologize. Good. I let out a low, cold laugh. That's all I needed to hear. I shoved my suitcase to the side and calmly walked back into the living room. I pulled a chair out and sat down right in the middle of the chaos. Now, I said, my voice calm and cutting, let's talk about your father, Brian. Brian's forehead creased in confusion. Melissa's face went pale. Her expression guarded. Harold looked like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Did you know? I said without preamble. That your father has another family? The words landed like a bomb. Harold leapt to his feet, grabbing my arm in a panic, his voice loud, angry, and trembling. What the hell are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Saying this in front of the kids? Harold spat, his face a twisted mask of rage. But before he could go further, Brian stepped forward, surprisingly firm. Dad, let her finish, he said, cutting him off and, for once, taking my side. Harold's cheeks went red as he turned on Brian. She's lying. You know what kind of man I am. I wrenched my arm free and stepped back, my eyes locked on Melissa. Am I making this up? I asked her pointedly. You were there when I found out you wanted to stand back and stay quiet? Not tonight. You're part of this too. Everyone turned to Melissa. Well, I said evenly. Tell them, am I lying? The room went still, so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Melissa's eyes dropped to the floor, and for a long moment she didn't say a word. Finally, she whispered, I don't know, maybe Margaret was just upset and said something she didn't mean. Harold let out a sigh of relief, almost like he'd been holding his breath. Of course she wouldn't tell the truth. I let out a low, bitter laugh and pressed on. Her name is Denise. She lives at 113B Lincoln Street, apartment 302. That's where your father's other life is. If you don't believe me, go knock on her door yourself. I paused for a heartbeat, then added coolly, oh, and be polite when you do. The person who opens the door might be your brother. He's 31, just a year older than you. He's married with a little girl. So besides Mason, your father also has a granddaughter. My final words landed like a bomb. Harold's face went pale as Chalk Melissa's panic was written all over her face. They never expected me to know so much. The affair, the address, the age, even the child. And they sure didn't expect me to tear their perfect little charade apart in one breath. None of this would have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Joan Carter, my supposed best friend. She was the one who first spotted Harold with another woman, did her own little investigation, and handed me a neat file with everything. Photos, names, even the exact address of his secret life. But what Joan didn't know was that by the time she sent me that file, I had already seen it all with my own eyes. That day at the grocery store, I was sweaty and tired, my cart piled high with everything the family needed. I was standing in line, waiting for my turn, when I looked up. And there he was, Harold, just a few steps away, walking with a woman around my age, his arms full of shopping bags, following her like a loyal husband. She had a polished look, her silver gray hair styled perfectly, her skin smooth and pampered. She moved with elegance, like she'd never known what it meant to strain or scrape by. Holding her hand was a little girl, probably around Mason's age, skipping along and laughing. "Grandma!" the girl chirped, looking up at the woman. Then she turned to Harold with a beaming smile. "Grandpa!" A sweet family moment, picture perfect, warm and cozy. And there I was, sweating through my shirt, my hands raw from carrying groceries, staring at my husband like a stranger. He looked gentle and happy in a way I hadn't seen in decades. The man who barely spoke to me at home was now the loving husband and doting grandpa, just for them. My arms went numb. The cart slipped from my hands, cans and fruit clattering across the floor. I snapped, I stormed toward him, heart pounding in my chest. "Harold!" I yelled, grabbing his collar. His face drained of color like he'd seen a ghost. The woman and the little girl froze, and the girl shrank behind her. The woman clutched Harold's arm, trying to pull him away, but I wasn't going to let him slip away this time. Years of silent resentment erupted out of me in one breath. I shoved him hard. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. "Where's our money been going? How long has this been happening? You owe me the truth." Shoppers stopped to stare. Some started filming. I didn't care. I'd spent years swallowing my pride, biting my tongue, holding back for the sake of peace. And for what? To be replaced? Discarded? To watch him live a life he never shared with me? I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I'd make sure everyone saw the truth. We were still arguing there in the middle of the store when, like some cruel joke, Melissa showed up after work and saw the whole scene. She rushed over, trying to pull me away, to hush me, but it was too late. The mask was off, and there was no going back. That night back at home, I finally heard the whole truth. Turns out, Harold had been seeing her since the year I was pregnant with Brian. Turns out, every time he disappeared after drinking, he wasn't out with clients. He was at her place. Turns out, most of the money he earned never went to our home. It built a life with them instead. Every, it turns out, was more ridiculous than the last. But the worst part? She knew about me the whole time. She knew Harold was married, knew he was starting a family with me. And she didn't care when I confronted her. She even tried to act like she was doing me a favor, told me not to make a scene, said she was just trying to protect the family. She claimed she didn't want Harold to end up old and alone, and she said she was fine being the secret woman as long as she could stay in the background. Like she thought she was giving me some great gift. She thought I should be grateful. I stared at her, her lips moving like she had the right to advise me. And all I could think was, how blind do you have to be to think you're doing me a favor? I turned to Harold, my voice calm and steady. Let's get a divorce. But before he could speak, Melissa jumped in, trying to play the mediator. Margaret, please take a moment. Think about Brian. If this gets out, if people find out why you're divorcing, what will the neighbors say? I almost laughed out loud. Of course, appearances over truth. That's all that mattered to them. I know exactly what you're worried about, I said softly. But at some point, a person has to decide if they can live without dignity. Melissa kept pushing. Just pretend none of this happened, okay? Men mess up, it's what they do. Keep up the act for Brian's sake. You can still have your life. So I thought it over. I swallowed my disgust and made a deal with Harold. We'd stay married in name only. No more pretending at home, just a public front for the kids. But really, our marriage had died long before I thought I could keep going. Just one last compromise, one final sacrifice. But then my body began to fail me. I went to the hospital alone, a strange ache in my chest I couldn't ignore. That's when I heard it. Cancer. That's what all those years of silence and endurance had bought me. Sickness. Why should I be the one paying the price for his mistakes? Why should I keep breaking myself apart to protect the fragile egos of a family that never truly saw me? Enough of keeping quiet. Enough of pretending everything's fine. I'm done shrinking myself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. I'm done swallowing poison and calling it peace. Let's go, Brian, I said, my voice calm and sure. Let's see if I'm really just making this up. No sooner had I spoken than Brian grabbed Harold by the arm and marched out the door. I followed them, my suitcase wheels clicking softly across the pavement behind me. Melissa hesitated for a beat, then finally pulled Mason along and trailed after us. Joanne's document said they'd only moved into this house earlier this year, paid for with money Harold scraped together by selling his late parents' home and some land in his old hometown. When we got there, every word I'd spoken was confirmed. That's when Brian lost it. All those years of bottled-up hurt, confusion, and betrayal exploded out of him. He turned on Harold, his voice shaking with rage as he shouted, his whole body trembling. He wasn't just mad about tonight. He was bleeding from every wound Harold had ever left on him. He remembered everything, like in elementary school when he reached for a piece of roast chicken at dinner, only to have Harold bark at him, "Go ask your mother." Or in middle school, when he didn't have money for lunch and asked Harold for help, only to be brushed off again. "Go ask your mom." Or the time in his teenage years when he'd finally worked up the nerve to ask his dad about life, about purpose, only to be waved off with, "Ask your mom, I'm busy." Brian's voice cracked as tears welled up in his eyes. All this time I thought maybe Mom and I just weren't good enough. That if we tried harder, you'd love us. But now I see. You never meant to love us. You gave everything to someone else. Your time, your money, your heart, it all went to another woman, another family. And in that moment of raw pain, Brian lunged. He tried to go for the woman, but Harold jumped in front to shield her, and father and son started fighting right there on the front lawn. The neighbors came outside. People watched from their windows. Someone must have called the police, because a few minutes later, sirens wailed and 2 officers pulled up. They broke up the fight and hauled both Harold and Brian into the back of a squad car. Just before they slammed the door, Brian turned to me, his face twisted with tears and rage. You're so selfish, Mom. You blew this whole thing up just because you wanted a divorce. I know Dad was no angel, but you two were together for decades. Couldn't you just keep it together a little longer? You had to tear everything apart. For what? Are you happy now? This was supposed to be a party for Mason, not a circus. Are you proud of what you did? From the other side of the car, Harold snarled. You got exactly what you wanted, didn't you? You couldn't leave it alone. You had to rip it all apart. You think exposing me fixes anything? What the hell do you gain from this? Then Melissa's voice cut in, cold and sharp. Margaret, I warned you not to drag this out, but you had to make it public. Now everyone's talking, and those properties he sold? We could have salvaged something, but because of your little show, it's gone next year. That land's getting developed. There was going to be a resort, huge payout, but now, nothing, you ruined it. What were you trying to prove? One by one, they each took their turn laying blame at my feet. Each one for their own reasons, each one seeing me as the villain. But even as their words rained down, I felt nothing but a strange, perfect calm. Then Mason, standing off to the side, suddenly shouted out, But it was Grandpa who did wrong. Why is everyone mad at Grandma? Didn't you say if someone does something bad, they should say sorry? My heart clenched at his little voice, but Melissa swooped in and pulled him close, bending to whisper in his ear. When Mason looked up again, something had changed. His eyes were cold, distant, like he'd decided not to see me anymore. And I understood. I didn't say another word. I turned away from that house and walked away. Back at home, I picked up my suitcase, already packed, and without even glancing back, I walked out of that house, out of that life, out of a place that had never truly been mine. After that day, I cut ties with that so-called family for good. The first few nights were hard, waking up with my heart racing, haunted by old habits and restless dreams. But slowly I found my peace, because this was what I wanted, to leave them behind and finally live for myself. The pain? It wasn't nearly as terrible as I'd imagined. I splashed cold water on my face, patted it dry with a towel, and looked at my reflection in the mirror, wrinkled skin, silver hair, tired eyes. But I smiled at myself. Then I picked up my phone and called Joanne. I asked if she still planned to take that trip she'd been talking about this month. Joanne has been my dearest friend for years. We used to run stalls side by side at the local market. She'd lost her husband, and I'd been living like I didn't have one. We'd held each other up, raising our boys, navigating life, sharing everything we had when there was no one else to turn to. A few years back, Joanne's son Jason's business took off. He hired a housekeeper to help her around the house, and Joanne finally started living, traveling, exploring. She'd invited me along so many times, but I always said no. Always said I was too busy taking care of the family. But now I was free. When I called, Joanne was overjoyed. What changed? She laughed. You finally found the time. I'm divorced, I told her, my voice light. I thought I'd take a break and clear my head. She asked where I was staying, and I gave her the name of the hotel I'd checked into. I'll be there soon, she said. Wait for me. What I didn't expect was that she wouldn't come alone. She brought Jason and his wife, Emily, too. Before I could even argue, they packed up my things and took me to their house. Just stay with us a while, Joanne insisted, brushing off my protests. Stop overthinking. Emily gave me a gentle smile, seeing how lost I looked. You've done so much for us, she said. When our daughter was little, you were always there. This is just us giving some of that back. Jason added, his voice earnest. Please, think of me as your son. You helped us when we were struggling. My mom and I might have been out on the street if not for you. Their words made my throat tighten. In truth, they were giving me far too much credit. All I'd ever done was help Joanne through a few rough patches, babysitting here and there, lending a little money when she needed it. Just the things you do for a friend you love. My fingers brushed the pearl necklace around my neck. Jason's birthday gift to me this year. He'd never forgotten a single birthday since he started working. At first, it was small, thoughtful things. Later, it was jewelry, nice clothes, surprises that made me feel remembered. I used to hesitate, but he always said, it's from all of us, a little thank you. So I started returning the gesture. Small gifts for Joanne, a little something for Emily. It was nothing fancy, just something to say, I see you, thank you. It made me feel like I was doing my part to keep the scales balanced. But how do you ever truly repay kindness like that? How do you thank someone for giving you back a sense of belonging? All I'd offered was a helping hand, and in return, they gave me something far more precious. Joanne just laughed when I mentioned it and said, That's what family does. You don't need a reason to care. Later, she had Jason book us a 15-day trip, and she was right. When your heart is heavy, a change of scenery can work wonders every day away. I felt my spirits lift. My body felt stronger, my mind clearer. When we got back, I found a small apartment and signed the lease. I knew my time was short, and I didn't want to spend my final days in someone else's house. I never told Joanne about the cancer. I just said I needed a little quiet time to myself. They didn't try to stop me, but they made me promise to call if I ever needed anything at all. Then, I started doing everything I'd once only dreamed of but never dared to try. First on my list, I signed up for a dance class. I'd always loved dancing as a child, but we couldn't afford lessons. This time, I chose something that felt bold and fun: hip hop. The class was full of 20-somethings, and I went just to give that little girl inside me, who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, a moment of pure joy. I didn't care what the younger ones thought. I didn't care if they giggled at my awkward steps. I only cared about how it made me feel. This time it was about me. Every day I practiced. I repeated the moves over and over, determined to get them right. I knew I would get better, that even if time was running out, I would leave behind one perfect routine just for myself. Like my life, imperfect, messy, painful, but still my own. And this time I was writing the final chapter myself. As long as I kept showing up for myself, dancing with honesty and joy, my life would have meaning. And slowly, I found my rhythm. My body moved lighter. My steps became sharper. Those same kids who once snickered, they started calling me the cool lady. Time flew by. 6 months slipped past in a heartbeat. One morning, I woke early and headed to a small photography studio downtown. I had my final portrait taken. Then I went straight to a funeral service company to set everything up for my last goodbye. I chose cremation. I wanted my ashes to travel with the ocean's currents, to drift freely and reach places I'd never seen. Even if only in spirit, I'd be carried to corners of the world I once dreamed of, whispering through cities over landscapes I'd never touched. Then I went back to my dance class. I asked my instructor for a favor, to help me record one full routine. She didn't hesitate. She even offered to upload the video to her own account, a platform where it could stay as long as no one took it down. She helped me set up my own profile too, and I uploaded the video myself. I wanted to leave something behind, a small testament to my life, a moment of joy that said, I was here. The doctor had told me I had 6 months left. After the divorce, I'd done everything I ever wanted to do. I truly thought I was ready. I felt no regret. I'd finally found my peace with the end. But then the end didn't come. One day passed, then 10, then 30. 2 more months rolled by and I was still alive. The funeral home began calling me regularly, checking in on how I was doing. At first, their tone was soft, gentle, the way you'd speak to someone whose days were numbered. But after a while, I heard the shift. Their voices grew uneasy, like they didn't know what to do with someone who was supposed to be dying, but wasn't. Eventually, the calls turned casual, even a bit amused. Ma'am, one of them said with a chuckle one day, you're sounding pretty lively over there. Looks like you've got plenty of time left. I didn't bother hiding my annoyance and snapped at him, but he just laughed. With that kind of energy, he said, I think you're going to be around for a long while yet. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed too. 3 months after the date I was supposed to be gone, something unexpected happened. I went viral in the local senior community. It all started with that dance video. I'd only meant it as a quiet keepsake, a final memory for myself. I never imagined the platform would actually share it to other users, but apparently it did. People watched, they liked it, they shared it. Before I knew it, my little video had become a local sensation. Suddenly, people were recognizing me at the grocery store, at the bank, at the pharmacy, everywhere. Aren't you that grandma who does hip hop? They'd ask. Then they'd gather around, smiling, telling me how amazing I looked, how even the younger ones couldn't keep up with me. After one of those encounters, still glowing from the compliments, I got a phone call. It was Harold. Hey, he said, like nothing had ever happened. When are you coming home? Brian wants to take you out to dinner. Mason says he misses you. I stared at the screen, seeing the names of a son and grandson who hadn't bothered to reach out for months. I smiled faintly. Oh? I said. So you and Brian are getting along again? Harold chuckled. Melissa thought it would be good for us all to sit down and talk things through. I let out a soft hum. That's great. I wish you all the happiness in the world. And then I hung up. Right after, I sent him a text. Unless it's about divorce, don't ever contact me again. But it was like he'd lost his mind. The very next day, he started flooding me with messages, roses, sweet nothings, little flirty notes. I didn't respond to a single one. A few days later, he called again, syrupy polite, asking how I'd been. Mid-conversation, though, he slipped in. Hey, by the way, sounds like you're doing pretty well for yourself, huh? That was all I needed to hear. I didn't even bother to reply, I just hung up. Later that afternoon, Joanne called me out of the blue. We need to meet, she said, her voice urgent. No, not over the phone, in person. I met her at a local cafe. She was already seated, her expression serious. The moment I sat down, she slid her phone across the table. Margaret, she said grimly, you have to see this. It turned out that Harold's so-called soulmate, Denise, had uploaded a video slandering me in public. In the clip, she called me a cold, heartless hag, said I was selfish, that I'd abandoned my family to go dancing around like a teenager, that I didn't care who lived or died. Joanne pressed play, her jaw clenched. Listen to this garbage, she muttered. Then she scrolled down to the comments. They were worse than I imagined. Hateful, venomous, cruel. Poor man, stuck with a woman like her. Old witch trying to act young, no shame at all. Who leaves their family at that age to go dance like a fool? The few kind words of defense were drowned out by the tide of venom. One comment read, Then I hope your mom turns out just like her. Joanne's hands shook with rage as she handed me back my phone. These people don't know a damn thing about you. I quickly opened my dance video and scrolled through the comments. At the bottom, there were still a few kind words. Cheers, support, little flashes of light. But further up, the same poison from Denise's smear campaign had spread there too. She's the one who should be sued, I snapped, my hands trembling. I'm going to press charges. She's the real homewrecker here. I stood up so quickly my chair nearly fell. I'm coming with you, Joanne said firmly, standing right beside me. And just as we were about to leave, my phone rang again. It was Harold. I let out a deep sigh and answered the call, bracing myself for another round of desperate apologies from Harold. But instead of his voice, I heard Denise. Gone was the soft, sweet tone of the so-called caring other woman. Now she was furious, her words sharp as broken glass. Listen here, you old hag, she hissed, her voice like a rusty knife. What the hell is going on between you and Harold? He's been sending you flowers and sweet messages. What's he telling you? You think you can steal him back? She didn't stop to catch her breath, her words tumbling out in a venomous torrent. He keeps saying I'm the only one he loves, that you're just some leftover he has to deal with so his son doesn't cut him off. So tell me, what are you two really talking about? Answer me. Her voice grated on my ears, but suddenly I started laughing. I realized right then, this had nothing to do with love or betrayal. This was pure jealousy and insecurity. She wasn't fighting for Harold because she cared about him. She was terrified that I still had some kind of power over him. That was what really ate at her. And that was what made her truly pathetic. They deserved each other, self-absorbed, petty, and small. So this is your real face, I thought. The woman behind the act? Fine. If she wanted a show, I'd give her one. I leaned close to the speaker and shouted, clear and loud, "Tell that old bastard to go to hell." Then I ended the call with a snap. I slipped my phone into my bag and looked over at Joanne, my chest heaving. But then I smiled, my voice strong and steady. Well, I said, now I really feel alive. 2 more months went by. Out of nowhere, Harold called me again, this time to tell me he wanted to move forward with the divorce papers. I let out a small chuckle and told him, I'm not ready to sign unless you stand outside City Hall and publicly apologize for every single thing you've done to me. And you're going to clear my name. Tell the truth about all those lies your dear Denise spread about me online. If you can't do that, don't even bring up divorce again. He lost it immediately, cursing at me and hanging up. I watched the call fade to black on my screen and felt my smile grow even wider. That was fine. He'd come crawling back soon enough. I already had a plan in motion, and none of them even suspected. Sure enough, 2 days later he called again, his voice frantic and eager. He agreed to everything. That was my sign. The time had finally come to end this chapter for good. Using the information Joanne had helped me gather, I tracked down Denise's number and sent her a simple message. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., meet me at City Hall. Let's clear the air face to face. The next morning, Harold was there right on time, waiting on the steps of City Hall just like I demanded. In front of a growing crowd of onlookers, he did exactly what I'd told him to do. He apologized. Out loud, clear and humble, he admitted to every betrayal, every lie, every cruel moment. And most importantly, he made it clear that all the filth Denise had spread about me online was nothing but slander. People gathered around, filming and whispering in surprise. Phones recorded every second, and clips were already going viral before he'd even finished speaking. But Harold didn't care. He just wanted it over with, wanted to wipe the slate clean, no matter how much of his pride he had to swallow. When it was done, we walked inside together. Two people who had once shared a life, now calmly signing it away. No tears, no drama, just a final quiet signature on a chapter that had dragged on far too long. At exactly 3 p.m., the steps outside City Hall turned into a stage. A woman in a fitted red dress stood there like a queen, her makeup perfect, her posture regal. Across from her, Denise fidgeted with her purse, looking anxious and unsure. Then Harold and I arrived. He didn't even spare Denise a glance. Without hesitation, he walked straight to the woman in red and took her hand in his, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Denise's face went pale, and in a flash of desperation, she lunged at him, grabbing his arm. But Harold just jerked his arm away, dismissive, and walked on with the woman in red, not even turning back. I followed them inside, calm and steady. We finalized the divorce paperwork, and the clerk told us to return in a week for the official certificate. When we stepped outside, Denise was still there, on the ground, sobbing and cursing into her phone, completely unraveling. Harold didn't even blink. The woman in red shot Denise one cool, bored glance, then walked off with Harold, her heels tapping out a rhythm of finality across the pavement. I walked over to Denise and stopped just in front of her. I gave her a small, almost playful smile. "So," I said lightly, "I heard you two were true love?" Her face twisted and she lunged at me, shrieking. But I was ready. I stepped aside, letting her stagger past me without even brushing my coat. "Damn, did you see that move? This lady's got some real fire," someone in the crowd called out, and laughter rippled through the group. I turned and gave them a wave, grinning wide. "Thanks," I said. Then I walked away, light and free, finally done with it all. Back home, I had barely sat down before the funeral home called again, just like they had so many times. "Hello, ma'am," the man on the line said, his voice half amused, half defeated. "I think it's safe to say you don't need our services anymore." I laughed and hung up. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Maybe it was time to check in with the hospital, just to see how things really stood. I couldn't keep living like I was dying forever, could I? The next day, I went in for a full examination. When the doctor came back with the results, he looked stunned. "Madam," he said slowly, flipping through the report, "your cancer is gone. No sign of it left. Nothing." I stared at him, wide-eyed. "What do you mean? Gone? Like, completely?" He nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yes. It's what we call spontaneous remission. It's rare, but it happens. You're not the first. There are documented cases of this. Miracles, really." He passed me the folder, his eyes bright. "Actually, a colleague of mine does a medical podcast and video series. He'd love to feature your story. Real patience, real hope. Would you be interested?" My eyes filled with tears, not out of sadness, but something stronger, relief, gratitude, pure wonder. I nodded, my smile shaky but wide. Of course. If my story can give even one person hope, it's worth it. A week later, Harold and I stood together at City Hall for the last time. We signed our divorce certificate, and just like that, every last tie was severed. That afternoon, the woman in the red dress met with me privately. I handed her the final payment we'd agreed upon, and she took it with a bright, easy smile. "Thank you, ma'am," she said. "If any of your friends ever need a similar acting service, let us know. We offer a great discount for returning clients." Later, I heard that Harold went into a full-on panic trying to find her. He plastered missing person flyers all over town, but of course, he never found a trace. A whole year passed, and I found myself becoming something of a local legend. People started calling me the cancer-surviving hip-hop grandma. It didn't take long to build a small following, and before I knew it, the name Cool Margaret had stuck. Eventually, I teamed up with someone to launch a little business. My partner treated me with real respect, handled the daily grind, always checked in on how I was doing, like family, really. Life kept moving forward, bright and full of possibility. Then, one day, someone from my past showed up out of the blue. Melissa. I hadn't seen or heard from her in ages, but there she was, sitting across from me like a ghost of the woman I used to know. The always polished, smiling daughter-in-law was gone. In her place was a woman worn thin, her eyes hollow, her shoulders heavy with years of worry. She sat there in silence for a while, then finally spoke. "Margaret," she said, voice small and cracked. "I need to talk." I didn't say anything. I just waited. I, I, I want to apologize, she said, her hands twisting in her lap. I was so wrapped up in myself. As long as I was comfortable, I thought everything else would work itself out. I never saw how much you carried for us all. She paused, her voice faltering, tears welling up. All this time I thought I was a victim too, but now I see it. I was part of what hurt you. And now I'm living the same life you once did, carrying it all alone. Brian, he's drinking too much. He's shutting me out, just like Harold did to you. And I'm the one left holding the pieces. Her tears fell then, and she whispered, "I finally get it. Leaving. It wasn't selfish. It was brave." I sat there quietly, just for a moment, and then I finally spoke. "You finally understand." She nodded, her face streaked with tears. "Yes, I really do." I stood up and walked over to her, handing her a tissue. "You're finally the Melissa I always hoped to meet," I said softly. And in that moment, there was no revenge in my heart, no bitterness, just a quiet final peace. About a month later, Brian came to see me. He tried to start with polite concern about my health, his words awkward and stumbling. But soon he shifted to his own worries. That's when he told me he was divorced. He sat across from me, fidgeting like a child, unsure of what to do. "Mom," he said, his voice low and shaky. "I know there was a lot of misunderstanding between us. I'm sorry." I gave him a gentle smile. When I was younger, I used to think that enduring for other people was a kind of kindness. But I've learned something since then. Real kindness is learning to love yourself first, not making others pay for your fears. I hope one day you'll understand why I chose the path I did. He lowered his head and sighed, a small, sad sound. I leaned forward. "Brian, you're not your father, and you never have to be. But it's time to grow up. Your son and your family need you now." He looked up at me, his eyes wet. I stood and pulled him into a hug, and in that hug I let it all go. I forgave him. Life has fallen into a gentle rhythm again. This time, it's a rhythm that feels like mine. I still go to dance class every day, learning new routines, practicing with the younger dancers. They call me their spirit coach, and I just laugh, calling them the extended version of my youth. The business is running smoothly. I've stepped back a bit, letting the younger team take the lead while I focus on what makes me feel alive. I've started learning French. I picked up photography. I'm planning a trip to Europe next year, to walk through the Louvre in Paris, to ride the scenic rails through the Swiss Alps, to dance on the cobblestones of Spain. I also volunteer at nursing homes now, teaching simple rhythm exercises to elders who thought they'd been forgotten. Seeing their faces light up with every step, every movement, there's no feeling in the world like it. Sometimes I catch myself in the mirror, tracing the lines time has carved into my face. But I don't see flaws anymore. I see stories, I see survival. Every wrinkle is a reminder of what I've faced and how far I've come. I tell people, I spent most of my life trying to please everyone else. Now, in the time I have left, I'm finally learning how to love myself. Because life isn't just something to endure, it's something to live. I used to think getting older meant fading away, shrinking back, staying quiet. But now I see. Even in life's second act, there are roads waiting to be walked, stories waiting to be told, dances still worth dancing. I was once trapped by fate, but I found a way to free myself. I was hurt by my family, but I've learned how to forgive without forgetting who I am. I used to think my story was ending, but really, it was just beginning. There are so many days left for me to dance, to explore, to live fiercely and fully. And as long as I'm still clapping for myself, I know the world will keep cheering me on too. This time, I'm finally standing in my own light. I am Margaret. I am no one's shadow. I am no one's property. I am simply proudly and gloriously me. And I love the woman I've become.